Alright guys, so HTTP got its first new verb in the past 20 years, and that is HttpQuery. So today we are going to look into this HttpQuery from RFC 10008. We'll bake this into a fresh .NET API and we'll see what problem it fixes. Alright, so we'll try to keep this video fairly short, and with that said, let's get into it. Alright guys, so this is my solution. It is a simple web API project and it is based on .NET 10. This solution has got a few controllers. The first one out of them is the product get controller. Now this has got a HTTP get method. What it does, it takes in the query parameters, all the integer IDs that you supplied in the parameters of the query. It is going to take that, and then because get calls are usually cacheable, so I've added this line over here just to make it cacheable. So our web server is going to cache all the get requests that it received. Now after caching it is going to look up all the prices of the IDs that you have sent to it. Cool. Now this is a fairly simple get method, and I'm now going to open up Postman and we are going to run this. Okay, so first let me run this project. Okay, so the project is up and let's come to Postman. Let's add a new environment, and okay, so I think the solution is running on 5080. That is correct. Okay, so let's add a new method. Let that be get, and I'm going to use to this. Okay, so the route is API v1 products. I'm going to copy this route over here and let me post it. Let me see if the host is set. So it is not. Let's copy this actually. Localhost 5080. Okay, and now let's try to make a call to this get method. Yeah, so we got 200 and we also got all the results over here. Pretty easy, usual stuff. Now let's actually try to query the prices for a few of the IDs, the actual get method that I just showed you. Now this method is going to query for ID 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and let's try to send this. Okay, so I think my URL was wrong. Let's add a slash, and now let's try to send this. I got 200 and I also got the ID and the price for those things. Pretty easy, right? Okay, so we are good so far. I had 5 IDs. I was doing a bulk lookup. I had 5 IDs and our get method worked fine. But what if I have 50 IDs? Let's see what happens then. So I've now added 50 IDs over here and into the query parameter, of course, and let's send this call now. Yeah, so this also works fine. 200 okay, and we got 50 IDs, 50 prices, and pretty good actually. But now what happens if this is a bulk get endpoint and the network ops team or some operations team, they come the next day and they want to execute the prices for 1000 products, let's say. So they would do a query like this, right? Now what happens? Let's see. I'm going to send this and I get a 414 URI too long. So this is the first limitation of get that we see. Now this, what I did was quite trivial, but in reality, there could be bulk operations that actually want the user to query some 1000 product, right? Or maybe some other kind of complex query that might require some AND operations, some OR operations, and several other things. So the query becomes more and more complex when you keep using get. All right, so now you might think that that's fine. I will put all these IDs into the request body of the get method. Well, technically you could do that. The problem is what happens the moment your requests hit any real infrastructure between the client and your API. First problem, the CDN. Well, CDNs like CDNs of Cloudflare, CloudFront, all these or many other CDNs for that matter, they are going to strip your get request very silently. Your controller is going to get that stripped request body. It is not going to fail. It is not going to give you an error, but it is just going to give you an incorrect response. The second issue is with the reverse proxies. Now, there is no reliable behavior of how these reverse proxies will work. Some may or some may not strip the request body of a get request. Some may just log a warning and pass, or some might just allow it to go through. So you can't really rely on them. Now, API gateways often reject the get request with a body with a response of 400 bad requests or a 411 length required. Also, a few cases have been reported where API gateways have found this kind of request as an API smuggling request, and they have just dropped the connection. So even though the spec allows it, network doesn't. You would ship it, it would work just fine on your machine, but it would silently corrupt in production the first time it goes through a CDN or an API gateway. So in practice, industry did what you would expect and reached for post as a workaround. So now let's look at the post. So now this over here, I've got another controller called post controller. Now this again is very similar to the get, but it uses the HTTP post verb. It has got a from body. This is the request structure or the class, you can say. Now let's go back to our Postman, and this is going to live on v2. Okay, so I'm going to change this to post, and I'm going to remove everything from here. Then I'm going to go into its body, and I'm going to choose body raw JSON, and I'm going to put this array over here. Now this is nothing but an array of IDs. So now my endpoint is this much. It has got a body. Also, I would need to add a few headers, make it application JSON, and content type. That again will be application JSON. And now let's send this. Something wrong. Okay, this has to be v2. Let's send this. Yeah. So now we get 200, and we also get the request. We also get the prices of all those IDs that we had sent. Now you might think that pretty much it is quite same to what we were doing in the get, but this time we have just added a body to our request. Okay. Now because we have done that, we are going to pay the tax for this practice. What is going to happen is, this is a read operation that you are doing, but you have hidden it under a post verb. Now, anyone who sees this is going to assume that this query or this method hit is going to create something on the server, because posts are usually used to create something on the server. Now, because it is going to create something, it will never be cached, right? So even though you keep hitting this, it is the response that you are receiving will never be from a cache resource. It will always be from the server. All right. So you have lost that caching capability, even though this could have been, this is a read operation and it should have been cached, right? Second point. Now, there is this thing called idempotency. Now, whenever you do a get request for a product ID 1, it is going to give you the same response, right? If it has not changed, if the ID is 1, the name is this, and the price is fixed, every time we are going to get the same result. But post requests are never considered as idempotent. So we have lost that flexibility also. Also, if you have ever used things like poly, which automatically retry requests. So things like poly and browser fetch and load balancers and proxies, they are going to refuse to retry a post request. So the pattern works. It is just semantically very dishonest, I would say that. And once we have added this kind of thing into our project, we are going to pay for it forever in caching and retries. So now we are going to talk about the new HttpQuery method. But before we do that, what is the current state of HttpQuery in the ASP.NET Core ecosystem? Is the query actually supported as of now, as today? Have a look at this ticket from GitHub. Now, this is on the official .NET Core or the ASP.NET Core GitHub repo, and this ticket is going to tell us the exact state of the HttpQuery method. In the August of 2025, ASP.NET Core shipped HttpMethod.Query and HttpMethods.Query. The framework, it knows about this verb, but the team held back the HttpQuery attribute because of the pending community feedback. Now, all of this is mentioned in this GitHub ticket. I will mention this link in the description. You can have a look from there. So what I've done over here is, if you look at this HttpQuery attribute class, this supported methods list is referencing the real HttpMethods.Query. So this is some kind of constant I've tried to bring in. It is not a string. And the day Microsoft actually ships HttpQuery, this file will go up. So for now, this is the kind of shim that I've built, and we are going to use this into our product query controller. Okay, so this HTTP query is not coming from ASP.NET Core MVC. It is coming from this attribute class that we have built. Cool. Now let's look at this controller method, which says lookup prices, and it is of type HTTP query. And this is mostly the only difference between the post and the query method. In the post controller, we had this as HTTP post, and over here we are having it as HTTP query. Now, one more thing to notice over here is this line over here. Now, post requests were not cacheable, but query requests again can be cached. So we are adding this cache control line over here, and this is legitimate. So now let's try to run the Postman again, but this time with query verb. Now this query wasn't available initially, so you just type here query, and that's it. Now I'm not going to change anything over here, but I think the route parameter or the route is now v3. So I'm just going to change this as 3. Rest everything remains same. And now if I hit send, we would see that we are getting 200 OK for a query request. So it is essentially the same body as post on the wire format, but the semantics are now safe. It is idempotent, plus it also unblocks caching and the retry mechanisms. Now, although we have got the new HTTP query method, there are still a few caveats that I want to bring up in this video. First, the infra support right now for this HTTP query is still uneven. Some older proxies and API gateways still reject newer methods. So before you add this to your project, test it at your end. OpenAPI 3.1 didn't know about the query method, but OpenAPI 3.2 has fixed it. So Swagger UI, Kyoto, or any other generator that you use, that might need an update before it shows up this query endpoint in the docs. Because query has come up, you don't really need to strip out get from all your places. For anything that is shareable or can be bookmarked, get remains the right choice. Query is mostly for the reads where the filter or ID list genuinely needs a body rate. The whole point is honest verbs. Reads should look like reads, and the client, the cache, and the retry policy, and also the reviewer of your code all should agree, right? So if this video made sense to you and you think that your time was utilized, consider liking this video, subscribe to my channel for more such videos, and I'll see you in the next one.